All right. Let's go ahead and start the program. Today is October 2nd. It is International Day of Nonviolence. And it's really just an incredible time in our nation's history that we're really coming together. Survivors from all across the country are coming together to call for an immediate end to all forms of violence at work. So my name is Kimberly Young McClear, and I'd like to welcome again everyone to our 2020 National Summit for Survivors. And I especially would like to welcome our distinguished speakers, our guests, our allies, and of course, our survivors. So as I mentioned before, this is the first year that we are coming together from all across the country to call for an end and stand against all forms of violence at work. So this includes racism, harassment, sexual assault, physical violence, intimidation, bullying, hazing, and retaliation, and anything that looks like that is harmful and detrimental to our workforce. So what is this really, what is this really about? A lot of times people, and as we get through the agenda, we'll elaborate a little bit more on this, but oftentimes survivors are dismissed, not taken seriously. So I'm just incredibly proud to be a part of this amazing project, to work alongside all the folks who made this possible, all of our executive sponsors. So today and every day, we honor our survivors, we honor them, we honor their voices, we honor their stories, and we honor their expertise. The executive sponsors of the National Summit of Survivors are Whistleblowers of America, Modern Military Association of America, Whistleblowers of America, sorry, it's a duplicate, Dignity Together, Civility Partners, National Whistleblower Center, Whistleblower Summit and Film Festival, and CG Spectrum. Without these sponsors, this summit would not be possible. To learn more about each of these sponsors and to also view their resources, please go to nationalsummitforsurvivors.com. Again, that's nationalsummitforsurvivors.com. So we are pleased to feature more than 12 amazing speakers for our lineup today, and it's going to be covered in the form of 3 panels, followed right after the introduction of 2 of our keynote speakers. So the first panel is on the power of storytelling and effective strategies. Panel 2 is on the role of healing and social justice. And panel 3 is on dignity and community accountability. And just for all of the participants' awareness, this is being recorded, and clips and portions of this summit will be available on nationalsummitforsurvivors.com. So at this time, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Danny Johnson. Danny has proven himself to be a versatile actor with limitless range in a career spanning multiple decades in film, television, and the Broadway stage. Recent feature films include Lazy Susan, Villains, Still Here, and the upcoming Are You Happy Now? On TV, he's done memorable guest starring roles on Pose and Law & Order SVU. He has also been on recurring roles for Life on ABC, Bluff City Law, NBC, and The Flight Attendant, HBO Max. His portrayal of Ben Donovan had him crossing over multiple shows and the Marvel Universe on Netflix's Daredevil and Luke Cage. It is my esteemed pleasure to welcome Danny. We are so fortunate to have you here, and we're looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. I'm delighted and honored to have been invited to be with you all today for the National Summit for Survivors. You may wonder what I'm doing here. What's this actor doing here? Well, I'm really here because I want to share my empathy. Violence in the workplace is, in my particular field, has been highlighted, particularly in the last several years, with, in particular, to sexual violence. We've seen a whole Me Too movement somewhat spawned from some of the behavior that has taken place in the film and television industry, and throughout business and throughout our country, for sure. It really, I think, is just so unfair that some people in a place of power have the ability and the wherewithal and I don't know. And it's the, it really feels kind of evil to me. That's not really probably the best word to use, but you know, people go to work. They want to work, do their jobs, take care of their families. They're not really in it for, oh, what does the boss think of me, or am I going to be able to make it out here without, being harassed by my boss, or is somebody going to put their hands on me? Am I actually going to be harmed? So this is a pernicious type of violence that I find really, really offensive. And so, I'm really pleased to be with you here today. Um, I would say that, uh, as an actor, a lot of what I do, well, chiefly what I do is tell stories. I started telling stories on, in church, and then, in school and plays, and, now on television and film. But at heart, what we are storytellers. And a big part of being able to communicate a story is finding the truthfulness of it. And for a lot of people, um, the, the violence that they experience at the hands of, predators, or, in workplace situations, is something that is kind of they hold on to. A lot of people really hold on to. They don't want it to share it, to have it be known that this is something that happened or whatever. But sharing that story, there is quite a bit of power in it. And as a storyteller, this is something that is key to what I do. And what I think sometimes people may not always understand is that they have a lot of power within themselves, in their own situations, throughout their own story. And the television and film industry, as an actor, what we do a lot is humanize these stories that are really quite universal. They may seem very particular to the person who is, being violated, who's having some type of issues and difficulties. It may seem really, really particular to them. But these scenarios often play themselves out time and again with many different people, and there's patterns involved. So, in what we do is try to find these ways to humanize, these stories, and bring them to people, that let people connect with them and be able to tell their own stories as well. Um, Years ago, I was in a town. I think I was in New England, in a town. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I was working. I was making a film, and I was in the hotel bar, and having dinner at the bar, and a gentleman sits down next to me, and we strike up a conversation. What do you do? What do you do? He says, "Oh, actor. Okay, wow." Says, I became a lawyer because of Boston Legal. Watching that show, watching how these guys were looking out for the little guy. And I saw the effect that the law could have on people, and it inspired me to become a lawyer. And I thought to myself, well, geez, that is, you know, amazing, that we can, wake up one day, get in a car, go to the studio, put on, suits and uniforms or whatever, and create these feelings that inspire people is a real gift. That's something that, is amazing. And we can only do it because we have these stories that people share. And the stories that survivors have are something that you can share. Um, it's it allows you to empower and inspire other people if you can, share your story, uh, what happened. It can be an advisory thing. It can be an inspirational thing for other people. So sharing the stories that we all have, I really think I want to just applaud all these survivors for sharing their stories. Um, uh, this is going to be a really inspirational day. And so thank you for that. Um, you know, a lot of people will find it's really, really hard to share their stories, to be able to let that openness come. But what this really is a function of one's vulnerability. And this is an interesting word because a lot of people mistake vulnerability. They have the sense that it means that someone is weak or that someone is shuddering or afraid. Vulnerability is actually one of the pillars of strength. It's through one's ability to open themselves up and bare their souls in a very open and passionate way that actually lets you share that story and find strength in, someone else's understanding of it. Uh, I can't say how important that is. Vulnerability is a strength. It's one of the greatest strengths that we have as human beings. So please, continue as all survivors must, and as we all have, tap into our vulnerability because this will only lead you to truth. So I don't have extensive remarks beyond this today, but I do want to come and share my, these brief remarks, congratulate everyone for putting together this outstanding event. And I send you all of my support and inspire you, hopefully, to continue to tell your stories, share your stories. This is how we can affect change. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Danny, for your inspiring and very thoughtful remarks. And it literally sets the stage of how powerful storytelling is in order for us to make positive and sustained change. And so we're just incredibly grateful that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule to really honor this day and to honor each of our survivors. So we cannot thank you enough, but thank you so much. And looking forward to collaborating with you on another project. But thank you so much for your words.
My pleasure. Best to everyone.
So next, I'd like to introduce our speaker, our next speaker, Natalie Quam. Natalie is the president and founder of the Whistleblower Law Firm in Tampa, Florida. And she, along with her team of attorneys, are committed to helping each one of their clients seek for the justice that they deserve. Natalie is passionate about fighting for her clients and is very devoted to helping them seek a fair resolution to the injustices that they have endured. So when it comes to protecting clients who have faced discrimination, harassment, or retaliation, Natalie has certainly proven her case time and time again. So she is incredibly proficient and prominent, and we just couldn't be more excited to have her with us today. She also does a lot of work with veterans, and I know she's going to touch on a few cases that she has ongoing right now. So again, Natalie certainly understands how complicated it is to navigate the emotional battlefield, right, of what it really means to be a survivor and what that path looks like. So it's my pleasure to welcome Natalie. Thank you, Natalie, for being here, and we're looking forward to your remarks.
Thanks, Kim. Everyone, thank you for having me here today. When I was asked to speak today, I said, of course, there's a lot of opportunity to share with the community what our soldiers and victims face on a daily basis. And it's not a good story. Unfortunately, it's a sad story, but it's a fixable story. And I keep on saying that to everyone because, one of the things about the law is it's not always just, but it can be if we implement it and we enforce it the way it should have been enforced and implemented. So a couple of years ago, when I started taking on a lot more military cases and veterans cases, I do those pro bono because I really believe in helping our community and setting my time to those who need and who can't afford to, get legal counsel. Well, I didn't know the fight I was going to get into, let alone did I ever see or think that I'd be changing the law. But here I am today on my third or fourth bill, working on trying to change the law and help those who need help. Early on when I when I was focusing on the Richard Stayskull case, which was Sergeant First Class Richard Stayskull, was a Marine sniper turned Green Beret. He very successful, great patriot for our country. When I got contacted by his mom in the middle of the night, she said that he's dying from cancer, lung cancer, and nobody will take his case and nobody will help him. I didn't understand why nobody would help him. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. Then I, of course, come to realize that there was that Ferris Doctrine, 1950s antiquated law that basically says you cannot sue or have any legal recourse when you're active duty. Didn't make any sense to me. Why is it that illegals, inmates, civilians, anybody in our country, everybody in our country can sue for medical malpractice, but are active duty? Like, what would be the purpose of discriminating against that group of people? What, because they put on their uniform every day, because they serve our country, because they sacrifice their lives? It made no sense to me. But as everyone says, well, that's the law. Well, that's the way it is. But you know what? I hate that answer. I never liked it as a kid, and I sure don't like it as an attorney. So I said, well, if that's the law, then it has to change. Good luck. You know, how many people told me, good luck? Good luck. You're going to lose your shirt. You're going to lose your house. You're going to go bankrupt. You're going to, no one's ever been able to fix this law. It's from 1950, 70 years, go do something you can fix or do, and the more I was told no, the more I wanted to do it, because if I wasn't going to do it, then who was, with that kind of bad support program behind me? So I did. I focused on getting the law changed, which meant going to Capitol Hill and asking our legislators, our congressmen and women, to do this law. And of course, I drafted the bill. I spoke to both sides. It wasn't a political issue, it really wasn't. I didn't want to get caught up in the politics. Actually, that was the time when they were trying to impeach Trump. So the Capitol Hill was very polarized at that point. And I just remember thinking, God, it's like every time you walk into office, everyone's angry, and no one's really focusing on the issue at hand. But I was grateful to have Richard Stayskull with me and his wife, Megan, because we were able to go to the different offices and meet with the members. More importantly, they were able to humanize the issue. They were able to look at this person who's dying in their face and say, either I'm not going to be able to help you or I'm going to help you. That's really the most important part, is to put a human perspective on anything. Law is books and language. And to me, I don't work with that area of law. That area of law is just, anyone can regurgitate a textbook. I believe the law is all about helping others. So what I did was I was able to make or convey a human person and show them how the law was damaged, how it damages persons, how it barred somebody from having the same rights that they deserve like everyone else has. So when we were able to get that bill accomplished and passed, believe me, it took a lot of, like they say, you don't want to know how the sausage is made. It was nuts. But it was my first time up there, and I knew I wasn't going to fail my client. I was going to work my ass off, because if I didn't get this done, nobody was going to get it done. So when we got it passed, one of the things I started noticing, and a lot of people who contacted me was telling me about their cases and their matters. And that took me into Katie Blanchard's case, which was active duty nurse, stabbed, set on fire, and she's not allowed to sue because of Ferris. Again, Ferris. And so it was one of those, how troubling is this law? It is so unjust. And then, one of the things that everyone kept on saying to me was, well, this is the law. Well, you know what? Separate used to be equal. And then we came out and said separate isn't equal. Brown versus Board of Education. The Supreme Court has reversed itself several times. I entered the Supreme Court. I know that we can fix the law if we just have the energy and courage to do it. One of the things that was the most important to me is when you see somebody or you hear their story and you know how the law has harmed them, that gives you an ample opportunity to fix it. If we don't know what the problems are, we can't fix them. And so knowing the problem was to come up with a solution. So when we did Katie's case, right now we're still in court on this matter, because under the Stayskull bill, which is if you have medical malpractice, if you've been a victim of medical malpractice, you now finally can file a claim and get compensated under the Richard Stayskull Military Medical Accountability Act. Well, under that bill, when I drafted, I also included workplace violence and sexual assault. Unfortunately, they stripped the bill of that language, so we only came out with medical malpractice, which is still a good win. But we now have to work on workplace violence and sexual assault. So I drafted a bill for Katie Blanchard for workplace violence, where, you know, they have that obligation. They have to protect victims of workplace violence. Just because you're in the military doesn't mean you're immune from being harmed or being bullied or being hazed. So that is a really important bill that has to get passed. And of course, as I continue to work on these bills and these matters, the Vanessa Guillen case came around, and I was watching on the news, and I was just thinking, how troubling is that? I wish they would have never stripped the bill, the Richard Stay School Military Medical Accountability Act. I wish they didn't strip that language of sexual assault, because we would have had, the family would have had a right to be made whole. So that's when I drafted the Vanessa Guillen bill. And right now we're hoping that Nancy Pelosi said that she would get it on the House floor for a vote. We're waiting for that. You know, unfortunately, again, going back to the politics, you'd be surprised how much politics has an impact on our rights. Because if you don't have a bill passed, you don't have a law, which means you don't have the rights. So again, going back to this whole, now it's election year or whatever, and they want to hold this bill up. And it's really problematic for me, because that's not just and that's not fair. But you know what? Beggars aren't choosers. I'm hoping that we can get this sooner than later introduced on the House floor, so that way they can vote on it. But it's been quite an experience for something that I'm doing pro bono. Like, I didn't think I would be going several years without pay, but I can't tell you how rewarding it's been, and how much I have found opportunity to help people in the community that really deserve it and need it. So, you know, one of the things we could do as a society is continue to help support victims. You know, it used to be, and I think it used to be, that victims, it was a stigma, like, yo, there's a victim, like, pretend like you don't see it, pretend you don't know about it, so that way you don't get involved with it. That's why I used to always hear, don't look, you know, because then they're going to ask you questions. But I think it's important that we start looking as victims as people who could be advocates. You know, everybody has a story to tell. Everybody's been victim to something. I don't care who you are, where you came from, if you're rich, you're poor, you're white, you're black, you're female, you're male, I don't care. Everybody has been victimized by something somewhere in their life. And unfortunately, you could take those people who have suffered from PTSD from being victimized, or who have continued to be, let that experience destroy them, or there's that there's PTSD and there's PTSG, which is the post-traumatic stress growth. I believe in that PTSG. I'm a believer in that. I believe that horrible incident, and by the way, don't think that I'm the advocate without having been a victim myself. That's where you get your strength. I always say it can either destroy you or it can make you an incredible tiger, an incredible person that can fight for people, because you can understand the harm and what they're going through and how unfair it is. So take those negative experiences you have and use those to your advantage. Use it as currency. Put it in your pocket and think about how you can now understand something that most people wouldn't understand or know. And take that information, I say information is currency, take that information and use it to bringing awareness to a matter. Bringing awareness is part of the resolution of something. Awareness, and I said this to the Guillen family when I first met them, that's great, you're doing all these vigils and protests and such, but protests and vigils only do so much. It brings awareness. The point about bringing awareness is bringing solutions. And you can't stop short of a solution, which means legislation. Do not let somebody just say, here, I got it, I'll take care of this, and then just go and protest. Protesting doesn't change anything. It just brings awareness. When you take the awareness, now create a bill with it. Create legislation and work on getting that legislation passed, because now with that awareness, you've got a bill, and now you got pressure on Congress to get that bill passed, and then you could change the law. So changing the law is what you want ultimately to do. You don't want to have, how many times are we going to have protests? Bring legislation, bring change the law, fight for the law to be changed, because otherwise there's going to be a new victim every day. Like Fort Hood, like the other day I was on a show and Nancy Garrison, she said to me, what's changed since you were last on? I said, 2 more people died. We're now up to 30 soldiers. Like, if we don't have this, if we don't have the legislation, it's never going to change. We're going to continue to have more victims and more victims. So I want people to start devoting their time to really watching what's going on in the law. devote your time into focusing on legislation and supporting legislation. Don't just go up there and scream and cry. That's part of your, I consider that part of your therapy, you know, like you're going to let it out, but that's not going to resolve anything. So everybody stand up and realize, you know, as a victim, that is part of your advocacy. That's part of step one in your advocacy. Let that be your strength. Let that be your courage to go forth. Don't think of being a victim as a negative. Look at that as a positive, because everybody's a victim somehow, somewhere. You just want to use that experience to help bring change so it doesn't happen again. And I hope I've given you some insight on what I do and why I do it. But always feel free to call me. My law firm is the Whistleblower Law Firm. I use that 813-WHISTLE as the phone number. I love to help people. I try to help as much as I can. Right now, I'm focusing on getting this legislation passed. But if you ever really need any help or questions, please feel free. Whistleblowers of America is part of the organization. I'm on the board of that organization. That's been amazing. Jackie Garrett is the president of it, and she has done an incredible job having people contact her, asking for questions, giving guidance, speaking to Congress. You know, I mean, we all on the Whistleblowers America and whistleblowers out there couldn't do it without her. You know, she has been an incredible advocate of whistleblowers and victims. And more importantly, she's been an incredible advocate of doing right. And so if we can help you in any way, we're all here for you, and let me know if that's all I can give you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Natalie. There's a lot to unpack in your remarks, and just on a personal note, what resonates is oftentimes victims or survivors were kind of discarded, and we're not really viewed as individuals that have expertise, that we have value in our experiences. You know, we can work with those experiences, right? The experiences that we went through, we can use those to actually make real change. And
Yes.
So completely agree with your comments. And thank you also for mentioning Katie's story. Katie is actually on the agenda. She's one of our panelists. She's on panel number 2. And shout out to Jackie Garrick as well. Jackie's on panel number 1. So we have an incredible lineup of speakers.
You
And
do.
just couldn't thank you enough for, I know you must be busy all the time, but we are with you fully as you pursue and fight for justice for your clients, because justice for your clients is really justice for everybody. So
That's right.
we wish you the best, and couldn't thank you enough for being a part of the summit this year.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate you hosting this and doing this, and I wish we had more of you out there.
It's one day at a time, and I'm happy to come together on October 2nd and really stand in solidarity. So thank you again, Natalie.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce one of our executive sponsors, Catherine Matisse-Sundell. And Catherine is just really an incredible person, incredible human being. And I'm so glad that she has carved out time to make some remarks. And then we're going to kick into our 3 panels. And so Catherine founded Civility Partners in 2009, and she has drawn from her own experiences being bullied at work while she was an HR director. And she saw firsthand what this can do to an individual, to an organization, and therefore she created Civility Partners with a mission to create positive, respectful environments for all. And so she's been providing consulting to Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, government, and more, including higher education and a lot of other organizations. Catherine is an award-winning author. She's a speaker, a blogger, and one of the 4 founders of the National Workplace Bullying Coalition. So thank you, Catherine, for joining us today to make our remarks to help us kick off the summit.
Thank you so much for having me. And before I jump in, I just want to say that Dr. Kimberly Young McClear is a personal hero of mine. Kim, you are humble and quiet in interactions, but you are a loud force to be reckoned with out there in the world. And I'm just very proud to know you. So thank you for inviting me, and just always appreciate whenever I get an email from you. I'm like, what's she up to now? You're just a force to be reckoned with. So thank you for being a personal hero to me. As Kim mentioned, I started Civility Partners in 2009 as a result of my own experiences being bullied. And I had the fortunate experience of going through graduate school while I worked there. And so I was going through this really horrible scenario at work. I personally felt bullied, and then, of course, was dealing with the HR problems that created. And I had a class in grad school called The Dark Side of Communication. And of course, had to write a paper on something dark in human communication. And so decided to research toxic leadership or something related to what I was experiencing at work. And it was through writing that paper I came across the phrase workplace bullying, and I've never looked back. I just did everything in grad school around bullying, and I sort of jokingly serious say I have a master's degree in workplace bullying. And then I just really saw that this was a problem that other organizations probably had, and I knew a lot about it in the research, and so started Civility Partners. And it's been interesting to see the paradigm shift over the years. When I started Civility Partners, and I would tell people I'm a consultant who works with organizations to create more respectful environments, that people would say things like, well, we already have laws around harassment, or it was kind of dismissive. But over the years, my people, the HR people out there, have started to really pay attention to bullying. So I'm glad to see that. But we certainly still have a long way to go. I want to share that over the years, as I've talked to people who have been through bullying or harassment or some sort of workplace violence, I have come to recognize, or I recognized early on, that my story about bullying is kind of bullying light. Compared to the things that I've heard, I didn't have it that bad. And what that strikes me, because when I think about that scenario, even now, I can feel myself getting a little teary-eyed, and the amount of passion that it drives in me from this bullying experience so long ago. I think about the people who have it way worse than I did, and how much it must affect them, because my phone is ringing. Let me turn that off. Because I know how much my sort of bullying light version got to me. And so for people to go through something way worse, it's got to be just crazy. So I have taken the path of helping organizations solve the problem. And unfortunately, a lot of them don't come to me until something horrible has happened, be it a public declaration of being harassed or discriminated against the company, or somebody filing a lawsuit or something. So it's been hard to encourage employers to create respectful, positive work environments all on their own. So that's an unfortunate situation that a lot of my clients come to me in desperate times. One thing I have an interest in is survivors, and why, speaking of what Natalie said, post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress disorder. So through the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, we put this book together, Miss Kamei and I, and it's a series of stories of people who have been bullied and their survival story. So I think one call to action for all of us is to really think about the difference between people who do grow as a result of their experience, like many of us on this call, and people who aren't able to grow and instead go down a different path. How can we help those individuals grow as well? And I'll tell you, the one common theme in all of those stories in the book that survivors have is that they make a decision at some point. They draw a line in the sand and they say no more, and then they move forward accordingly. For me, I got laid off, and I made a decision on my drive home to never look back and to create a business around it. For others, it was just deciding I need to leave and just dropping the keys on the desk and walking out. So that's something I think is important, that survivors have this ability to just make a decision. I'm moving forward with my life, and I'm not going to do this anymore. So today is about a call to action to all of us. We've got to end workplace violence, bullying, harassment, incivility. We need to create positive, thriving work environments. Together, we have to do this together. And we have to focus on justice, and we have to focus on healing. We have to focus on dignity. And so just wanted to share too, I am one of the 4 founders of the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, and we've got an act that we're working on, legislation, as Natalie's, responding to Natalie's call to action. So the Dignity at Work Act is something that we're working on. I'll post the link here in a minute so you can get to it, but I would love your support for that. So anyway, thank you so much for having me here. And again, Kim, thank you for all that you do. You are truly a survivor to follow and just emulate in the way that you go about living your life. So thank you so much for being my friend, and thank you for having me here today.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's always great to see you and to collaborate with you. And you're also one of my heroes as well. And it certainly has been a journey. And you're absolutely correct about when you draw that line and you say enough. And when you make that decision of enough, your decisions and steps you take after that really, it just sets the tone, right? You don't need to go backwards, and you're always thinking about how can I grow, how can I move forward, how can I make change, and it's not easy. But once you make that conscious decision to move forward, that's yours, and no one else can really rob you of your dignity. So can't thank you enough for your remarks. So at this time, we are going to be jumping into our panels, and I know we have some excited folks who have joined us on this webinar to be able to ask some Q&A with some of our other speakers. As I mentioned at the beginning, for those who maybe are now joining, my name is Kimberly Young-McClear. I'm one of the organizers for the 2020 National Summit for Survivors. And so again, we have just a full lineup. We have 3 panelists. We have all together at the summit over 12 amazing speakers, and they're going to be talking about their own personal journeys, their personal experiences, and then offering words of advice to really just bring us together for this national call to action. So we're going to just take a brief pause, and then you'll see on the screen the names of the next panelists. So we're just going to pause and allow just a moment to sync up our 4 panelists for panel number 1.